Hey guys, I've got a video of my new AMD Ryzen PC build. I don't know when I'm going to upload this video. Today was the Ryzen launch day, but it'll probably be within a couple of weeks. If you just want to see the finished build, I'll put a timestamp somewhere on the video so you can skip ahead. So what I'll do is I'll give an overview of all the parts. I'll also show you some video of my old PC and some new additions I've added since my last setup video. Then I'll show the final build and some benchmarks I've run. So first up is the Ryzen 1700X processor. I was going to get the 1800X, but here in New Zealand it costs about $200 more, and the few extra 100 megahertz in performance probably isn't worth it. My old PC is an FX 8320, so the 16 threads is more of a need for me than the clock speed. If I can overclock this to 3.9 or 4 GHz, I'll be happy, and I have a feeling that all three chips released today might be able to get around the same overclocks. Next up is the Asus Crosshair 6 motherboard. I got this for the Crossfire and SLI future proofing, and it also uses the Supreme FX audio chipset. One thing I will say is that this motherboard only has PCI Express slots. I have an old sound card that uses a PCI slot, so I can't use it, but I've found a better solution for what I needed it for, which I'll explain later in the video. Next up is a Gigabyte GeForce GTX 1060. I have a GTX 1080, but it only has a water cooling block on it, and I don't have the old fans for it. And since I'm going full air cooling on this build and I'm mostly a console gamer, this will suit me for the time being. When I bought this card, I was actually going to get a cheaper card, but the retailer didn't have any in stock, and they offered me this card at the same price as the cheaper one, so I took it. Just on a side note, this is a Sony X800D 4K TV. My old TV became faulty a few weeks ago, and instead of getting a replacement from the retailer, I asked for store credit, which they gave. So with that credit, I ended up getting this. I was either going to get this or the Samsung KU series TV, but this has a 10-bit HDR panel while the Samsung only has an 8-bit panel. And since I'm mostly a console gamer, the 60Hz panel is enough for me right now. This is a Zalman Z3 Plus case. I got this because not only was it cheap, but it comes with 4 fans and filters for the front and the bottom. Since this is going to be an air-cooled build, that was pretty much all I cared about. You can fit a 120mm radiator in this case, but besides that, without drilling extra holes, it would be hard to do a water cooling setup in this case. The window on the side panel is a bit small, but that doesn't bother me too much. There's a little bit of room for cable management on the other side, so I'll do my best to have it as clean as possible. Next up is a 16GB kit of G-Skill Ripjaws RAM. This is 2666 MHz memory. I might swap this RAM in the future for some faster RAM, but I'll have to see what the compatibility is like with the motherboard, since right now it's early days. I have an older PC that uses DDR4, so I can put this into that if I upgrade. I'll probably wait to see if Hynix or Samsung BDI memory has better compatibility with this motherboard before I do upgrade anything. Next up, this is a Cooler Master 750 watt semi-modular power supply. This is probably a bit overkill for this build, but when I bought it, it was on sale for the same price as the 550 watt model. So if I want to do some upgrades in the future, this power supply will handle that. For air cooling, I have a Hyper 212 LED turbo. At this stage, I'm sticking with air cooling, and I have 2 other AM3 coolers that I can use. What I'll probably do is run this for a month and do some benchmarks and temperature tests and see where I go from there. This version also is ready for the AM4 socket. This is my old Kingston boot SSD from my previous PC. Most of my media is on a 20TB network attached storage array, so I'm limited to gigabit speeds, and this drive gets about 4 gigabits read and write speeds, so it's more than enough for what I need right now. So there is all the parts. What I'll do now is I'll show you the PC that this will replace, and then some additions I've made to my setup, and then some video of the final build and benchmarks. So this is the PC that's going to be replaced. That heatsink is a Cooler Master V8 GTS, which will work on the Crosshair motherboard, and that is sitting on an AMD FX 8320 chip overclocked to 4 GHz. There's also a Galaxy GTX 650, and since I've taken the SSD out of this machine, it's running on a 1TB Seagate hard drive. So now this PC will be used as a Plex media server, Adobe media encoder server, and I also have an external TV tuner for a media portal server. So now I'll show you some additions I've made to my setup. So I've added a few things to my setup, and if you've watched my 2014 video, you'll see I've changed things around. The first thing was the TV, and next up is I got the Razer Orb Weaver. This uses Cherry MX Blue switches. I got this because I wanted a mechanical keyboard for gaming, but I didn't want to give up my old G19S keyboard. I've been using this keyboard for years, and I use all the macro keys and profiles for video editing. Besides the macro keys, the most important thing I didn't want to lose is this LCD screen. I have this linked with HW info, and it can display any value calculated by HW info. You can fully customize this, and these are just the values that are relevant to me. And if you can see, I can also switch it to display info from another PC on the network. So with this, I don't have to have any open windows on my screen to do any monitoring. This is a Logitech G700S mouse. My Rat9 mouse died about 18 months ago, so I got this. And that's sitting on a SteelSeries 4 HD mousepad. I also have a SteelSeries QCK cloth mousepad. Next up is a digital to analog audio converter. This will take a Toslink optical signal and convert it to 6-channel analog audio for surround sound. So I mentioned the sound card earlier, and before I got this, I had the TV audio sent to the sound card, but I could only get 2-channel audio. So now I have this connected to audio splitters, which split with the output on the motherboard, which then goes to the G51 surround sound system. So now I can play 2 sources at the same time in surround sound. So I can have audio from a game console or whatever's playing on the TV, and at the same time have audio from the computer playing. I've added an HDMI switch for all my consoles, which goes straight into my capture card. My PS3 Slim died about 2 months ago, so I got this PS3 Super Slim secondhand. This is now my third PS3 after having the original Slim and now the Super Slim. I still have the Turtle Beach Air Force Delta headset, but it doesn't work on PS4, so I had to get this Sony wireless headset. I only use the mics on these headsets, so these will usually be around my neck when I'm gaming, and for actually listening to audio, I use the Sennheiser HD449 headphones. Also here you can see I've added a unmanaged network switch. I'm still using the old ASUS AC66U router. So that's what's changed or been added to my setup. And if you've somehow managed to still be watching this video, a big shout out to you. And finally, I'll show you the finished Ryzen PC and some benchmarks. So here is the final build. I'll have some shots of the case with the side panel off and on, and also some video of the PC at night. The graphics card is in the second slot right now because it was so close to the cooler in the first slot. I wanted to give the fan some breathing room while I did some temperature benchmarks. At the time of filming this part, it's the end of March, and since launch I've done about 4 BIOS updates, and right now I'm on the 0038 BIOS. I've overclocked the CPU to 4 GHz for the Cinebench CPU-Z and 3D Mark tests with the voltage at 1.42 volts on the V-Core. I got it to post at 4.1 GHz, but as soon as I tried to run Cinebench, it froze, so I've gone back down to 4 GHz. I then did some stress tests in IDA 64 and Prime 95 for an hour for each at 3.9 and 4 GHz, and used 3 different applications for taking temperatures. When I was running the benchmarks, I've taken the highest possible temperature reading to give a worst case scenario of temperatures. I'm also aware of the 20-degree offset on this chip. Right now I'm trying to keep track of updates on the AMD subreddit and overclocker.net forums. I'm getting around a 12-degree difference in temperatures between the 3.9 and 4 GHz. So after running these tests, I've put it back down to 3.9 where it's probably going to stay. For the live streaming test, I'm streaming to Twitch, and at the time of making this, Twitch just allowed streamers to stream at up to 6 megabits instead of the old 3.5 for non-partnered streamers. So I streamed CSGO at 720p while recording at 1080p and playing at 4K. And for the console stream, I was using an Elgato capture card with the input at 1080p, recording at 1080p, and streaming at 720p using OBS. So just some final thoughts. After a few weeks, it now seems from what I've read is that faster memory does have an effect on performance. So once AMD Vega comes out, I'll probably see what the performance is compared to the 1080 Ti, and I might do a RAM, GPU, case and water cool upgrade all at once. There's pretty much no room for cable management, as you can see on this case, but with the side panel on, you can't see any of it anyway. Overall, I'm quite happy with the build, besides a few scares when doing BIOS updates where I thought I was going to brick the board. So thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, leave a comment. I might also post this to the AMD subreddit, so you can comment there as well. And if you like the video, leave a like.